on the button.
Hey, looks like we're live.
Are we live? Looks like we are live. I can't really see who's on as usual. Well, welcome to the show. This is Level of the Lees. I was going to say something cheesy like Warhammer Wednesday, but hey, we just love Warhammer. Love the scene, love the game, and this is great. So we wish we can push our excitement and love for the game to more people, for more people to enjoy, and that's why we're doing this. So I guess as a start, my name is John. I'm your host. So we run Level Up the Leagues. I have a son who's 6 year old. That's how we started this whole channel thing because I want to inspire other people, other dads. And on the other side, the other handsome man on the other side of the screen is Tom. So I met Tom last month during one of the Dice Arcade events, which was my first 2K Age of Sigmar event. So a proper wargaming event, at least in my head. And he was gracious enough to join us and share some of his insights because I was talking to him and he's such a good guy and asked him, hey, would you be interested to share some of your in-depth knowledge? And Tom said,
I said yes. Thanks for having me on, John. My name's Tom. I run our local Age of Sigmar competitive 2K event. We do it once a month. I think I've been running it now for about 5 or 6 months. It might be. I think our 6th event is coming up this Saturday, and we run about 18 players a tournament. So and the community seems to be growing and liking it. So that is that's what I've been. Those are my credentials. I play 2 days myself. I'm actually going to Bathurst in a couple of weeks to play at their
jealous.
2K. Yeah, so that should be fun. I'm not. So that's information about me.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
Can I add one more piece of info before we get further, which is basic stuff we need to cover. We're not sponsored and we're not related to any organization in the commercial sense. We're just doing this because we love it. I met Tom at Dice Arcade. He helped to run the event, but he doesn't work there. So whatever we say, it's just what we think and our own views. So I want to get that out of the way. Yeah. Now, hopefully that's enough of an introduction. Now let's get on to the meat of today, which is some tips to help new players getting into the Age of Sigmar 2K event. Because I think that's really the fun part. I mean, painting model is great.
Yeah, I have to agree. Having a competitive tournament to go to, having three games in a day, or even 5 games across a weekend, pretty much that's where the real fun of the game is. Now, one of the more common questions I think for new players is, when can I play? When should I go to my first tournament? And the real answer is as soon as you can, right? Because even you should have a couple of games under your belt and be familiar somewhat with the core rules. But the quickest way you're going to learn is by playing games, and you'll get 3 games in one day if you go to a one-day. As long as you're okay with losing, because you're probably not going to podium, but still you should give it a go anyway and do your best. Meet some new people.
Absolutely right. We've got a nice comment here that says, "Tom runs a great event." Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, we've got Chris there. That's yeah. Christopher is actually, I think he's come to every single one of the AoS and 3D tournaments, and he very often wins the painting award because he's got this incredible custom Fire Slayers army of all. They're all women for the most part, I think. But they're all they're all very fluoro colored, and they're such a terrific paint job. So he earns that award most months.
Well, I hope to see that next time, Chris. I suddenly lost my train of thought, but yes, you're absolutely right. And I think getting to an event, I think it's absolutely great. That's where the fun is at. But I think for a new player, there's something you should definitely consider before you get into one of these events. not just for yourself, but I think also for other people. I guess a dumb example would be I got into this hobby blinded and not knowing what's happening. I didn't know Age of Sigmar at all. And if I went to an event when that was available at that time, which was about 18 months ago, it would have been a terrible experience for me and everyone else inside because I didn't know when you could pile in. What is pile in?
Yeah.
Because I thought I've played plenty of games in my life. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah, you
That's a
definitely would
mistake.
need to know the general rules, but also just other things to set yourself up to enjoy the day, because you're on your feet for about 9 hours, unless you
That's
do
a
have
lot
a
of
chance
time.
to sit, and it can be exhausting. So you don't want to set yourself up for failure. And by the failure, I mean your body fails. Like you can't walk afterwards, or you're dehydrated.
So the next event that you run, Tom, we're going to be expecting chairs, everybody.
Well, I mean, we supply chairs for all players at our events. So, but I've never been able to sit down while I play. I'm always standing for the most part. Unless it's like the last game of the day. Usually, then I'm so tired that I'm just sitting and waiting for my turn. Because you can get pretty tired.
And that's a great segue to get into what we're going to talk about today. So how we thought we might run this, I just had a chat with Tom before, is I'm going to warm up the session by giving my 5 tips, I think, for an absolute new player like myself, because I just went to one event, for other new players. And then Tom is going to come in and show off his knowledge and completely overwhelm my set of knowledge, which is for an experienced player and from a TO perspective, what's going to be helpful for new players. And yeah, feel free to ask questions. If we can, we'll interact with the chat. This is a new channel, so I appreciate everyone's coming here. And the fact that we have more than 0 people is a win already. So thanks for tuning in. You guys are awesome. Yeah, and you too, Tom, especially you. So let's start with, I've got a little deck here, and I'm also new at this, so apologize in advance, but here we go. All right. So let's see. Right, my first tip is you play to win, so you kind of got to know your strategy first. I think a lot of people say you play to have fun, but I don't know. If you're losing all the time, I don't know how much fun it can be. And to address that problem, you got to know your stuff. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, you need to know at least the basics. If you do go to a tournament, you shouldn't expect your opponent to teach you the game as you play, because frankly, you just don't have the time for that. The games on day, usually we run at AoS and 3D 2-hour, 45-minute games with a break in between round 1 and 2. And that's just to make it so the event's under like 10 hours. So to be able to do that, you do really need to know your basics at the very least. Now, if you do make mistakes or anything like that, that's fine. But and your opponent, if they're more experienced than you, they'll be able to correct you on certain things. But familiarizing yourself with the core rules at the very least, and your own faction rules, will go a long way on the day.
Totally. And so my 4 points is kind of exactly what you've said, but in a layman kind of way. The first one is you got to know what your attack stats are, because if you don't, you're going to struggle big time. Like you're not going to remember. And if you need to spend 15 minutes to check all your units, is it a 3? Is it a 5? How many attacks?
Yeah.
You're just wasting a lot of your time in game time.
Yeah, if you're unable to remember these rules, it's good to just have quick references in whatever form you feel. Generally you're required to bring your own battle tome. They're not the best way of checking everything unless you have a system, a lot of bookmarks of your units, because some books, like the Stormcast Eternal books, I think John, is pretty thick. There's so many war scrolls in that book. You can get around it by, I think we go into it a little bit later, but yeah, if you can familiarize yourself with a way to reference certain rules that you know that you'll struggle with as well. If you know your weaknesses of what you don't know, you should hopefully be able to prepare so that you do have a way to quickly check those things.
Yes, I can echo that. Even last time in the event that you ran, I've forgotten one of the key. Well, I mean, I didn't remember exactly the keywords for steadfast, smart. Could I run and charge? Can I run, shoot, and charge? Like, that makes a big difference. And just need to flip through 20 pages to find it. Oh, that was a waste of time. But we'll get more into the gaming aids later, because I think I've got a tip on that, and I suspect Tom will have a section on that too. All right. I think one I want to highlight is the special ability and the key combos, because as your own army's general, you expect to know this. And you mess it up, it's really a time wasted for you and your other player. I mean, your opponent, and that's no fun for everybody. Especially to the point that you don't know enough of it, or not familiar enough with the key mechanics, that you end up asking the other player and arguing about some basics. I think that's a real killjoy. So it's best to know what you can do.
Yeah, generally you're both expected to know the core rules, and if there's any disagreement, you can always involve the tournament organizer. That's kind of what we're there for. If there's any disagreement on rules, when it comes to your faction rules, though, because there are so many different factions in the game. Your opponent isn't expected to know your faction rules, and the more you play, the more different armies you play against, which you will if you go attend a lot of tournaments. You will become somewhat familiar, and if you watch a lot of battle reports, like on YouTube, you'll learn a lot about armies as well. But the last thing you want to do is misremember a rule of your faction, which gives you a huge advantage, and then it's only found out later in the game, because then you've inadvertently, misled your opponent, and you don't want to. That's a big feels bad moment, I think. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Win by cheating accidentally.
Yeah.
Okay. Move on to the second one. So I asked my son to give a suggestion, and he actually wrote this, and he typed it himself before this presentation. He loves tape measures, and I got to say, they are super useful.
Yeah, it's a great point by your son. Tape measure is a great aid, and you should always have one on you.
Yeah, and he would use it every day to measure stuff. But I mean, more to the point, tape measure has a special place in the sense I didn't realize how good they were until I used it for Age of Sigmar, because I thought I came from A Song of Ice and Fire.
Okay.
For the people who know it, you're talking about 6-inch to 12-inch movement.
Right.
6 inches short range, 12 is long range, and that's kind of it. So it comes with a set of 12-inch ruler. And I thought, oh, that's going to be enough. Oh, boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, the original, back in the day, I played Warhammer 40k way back when. And the box sets, they came with these, I think they were 12-inch, these red plastic rulers. And we ended up breaking them, me and my brothers, because we would hit each other with them instead of actually using them to measure things. So, yeah, got to recommend tape measures. They're far superior.
Yeah. Is that the same brother who's in the session right now?
In the chat? No, I think it was the other one, actually, my older brother.
Okay.
So, no, I don't remember hitting Jacob with a red ruler. So,
okay. Now, the third one is less obvious to new players, but for me, it was a big moment. So when I first started playing, I like to put my units base to base. So on the picture on the left-hand side, I've got 5 Vindictors protecting my Judicators, like my valuable long-range units. And what they do is they're so close next to each other. In this case, if the other player was smart and is lucky with a good roll, can easily charge through them and get to your expensive units, which is terrible.
Yeah.
So instead, what you want to do is something more like on the right-hand side. Leverage the coherency rule and spread them out 1 inch. You have a ruler, or put your thumb down if you don't have one. Just space them out. That makes a huge difference.
It does make a huge difference, and it is it's actually a term used in the game, and it's it's something that you should learn fairly early on. It's called screening units, and some units usually use your more less expensive units, like in Soul Blight, it would be your dire wolves. They're actually an excellent screening unit. Usually just to protect what is you would use them basically as a screen to protect your squishy glass cannons, like your Graveguard, or I wouldn't know what it is, like your Annihilators in Stormcast, or even Fulminators, if you want to protect them with some Vindictors. And then even if you're able to get a pile in following those Vindictors getting wiped out in the first combat round, they've done their job. The other thing to bear in mind as well is, especially more importantly for larger size groups of models, is because if you have a 5-unit squad like your Vindictors there, they only need to be within an inch of each other. But if you've got a bigger squad than that, you'll have to adhere to the coherency rule, which means that you would need them within at least 2 other models in the unit. So when it comes to, if you were to spread them out as much as possible, where you would have 3 on each end, as soon as you lose one, then you're out of coherency, which can be devastating for a unit. So you do need to really, if you're going to try to screen on a level like this, you need to be careful. Otherwise, you losing one unit in the squad you could lose most of them, because you'll then need to to keep moving until they're coherent.
Yeah, absolutely. But that could be more of an expert tip.
Yeah, for sure. That's a little bit more high level. Yeah,
but it's still important. Now, in this picture, I've chosen the Sisters of Slaughter from Adora of Cain, specifically because they also have a special piling rule with 6 inches.
Yep.
So for new players, it's also important to know, for the majority of the units is 3-inch pile-in, but there are units with 6 inches. So you're not going to know all the stats and movement ranges of all units. And a good thing would be, before the game, just check out the units, check out how much they move. I mean, if you are asking your opponent about any special movement characteristics, or you can just ask them a simple question: any units of yours that have 6-inch pile-in, and they will tell you. And that easily solves that problem.
Yeah, of course. And just for new players, bear in mind, for units with that special rule of 6-inch pile-in, they don't need to charge. So if they're within 6 inches during the combat phase, they're able to pile in, even if they're outside of the 3 inches that would make them in combat. So got to watch out for that.
And I think this is one the first one I want to put down, because I had personal experience of this on the bad side, is if you get caught out with these basic movement rules, you're going to have a terrible 2-hour game. Like, for example, if you lose your best units or your favorite unit on your first or second activation, it's going to ruin the experience for you. So it's best to know them up front.
Without a doubt, yep.
Yeah. Okay, next one. I've got a quick gaming aid example. So I think we have touched on this before. First one is getting quick access to the information that you need. So there are lots of ways to do this. Of course, on the left-hand side, we've got the general handbook. I think that's actually great because it doesn't have the fluff. Yep. I remember the first time seeing the Age of Sigmar 3.0 book is like this thick.
Yeah, you don't want to carry around the Bible.
Yeah, and to find stuff in that.
It's also good with the GHB because it contains all your battle plans and your battle tactics as well. If you don't have any other way of keeping track of your battle tactics, there's no. I mean, if all you have is the general's handbook, it is enough to get by. Although I think your middle picture there, you've got a quick reference sheet as well that contains all your battle tactics and other things as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is, if you can make that yourself, or if you've, there are other plenty of places online that you can get it. I think I go into it a little bit later during my slides. But I'll elaborate on that a little bit later.
Yeah. So my one is from AoS shorts.
Yep.
And the one on the right is my own homebrew model of exactly what's in the middle. So it's not it's not very user friendly. I bought it to the last event actually, and I didn't like it. So I'm going to the basic.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's just it's all learning experience. You'll figure out what is good for you and what's not good. Sometimes you will prepare something and you'll be like, oh, this would be a great way to quickly check, but then you realize how unusable it is in the middle of the game.
Full of regrets. I actually missed one ability activation because I was so busy trying to organize the board on the right hand side there, my battle tactic for the next round, because I don't want to make the other user wait so long. So I was reading it and I realized I missed something. Anyway, now another favorite gaming aid of mine is movement trace. So I'm going to show a quick video to demonstrate that. So I've got some Canary units. So typically that's what would happen. I move 5 models up. Now there's 2 things here to consider is, I guess that's normal, but moving one at a time takes a lot of time. The second thing is there's some units can get trapped with other bits of another unit, which makes your movement time even longer. Yeah. So I discover this gaming tray, and it changed my life because now doing the same thing, it's just so much easier, and I don't have to worry about the models breaking.
And like we were saying before, your biggest opponent on the day is time. So if you're running a horde army, like my competitive army is Soulblight Gravelords, and I run horde lists. I initially started with Castelli, which is all knights and stuff, but it really was not my style. So just if you're trying to run 60 zombies and 40 skeletons or the equivalent in your army, and you don't have movement trays, like you're gonna have just a rough time. You will and your opponent's not going to enjoy playing against you if your movement phase is 50% of the game. It's not going to be fun. You're not going to have a good time, and neither are they.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that was my favorite, and my last tip for new users, especially a reminder for myself, is so obvious but not. Hydrate a lot. Bring food, because in the last event I missed out lunch, and that was a bad opportunity. And then save energy where you can, because it's such a long day. And I guess what I refer to is sit around, rest when you don't need to be actively doing things. Like, you'll be surprised how fast energy get burnt.
Oh yeah. With the your point, most places do have local food venues for the most part, or they even, like, a lot of 2-day events, they take place at like RSLs or the equivalent, like so they have food on site. But it never hurts just to keep like a muesli bar, or it's just something that will tide you over, that you can have even mid-game while it's your opponent's turn, because something, even like some fruit like banana or something that's burns slow, that you'll just keep your energy levels up. Obviously not too much. You don't want to, like, sometimes a little bit too much is not good for you either. I think I go over a few things like that as well. So, I mean, we can continue.
Yeah, okay. We can talk about that.
I see Jacob actually. He's the Lumineth Wardens.
Those long spears, right?
Oh my god. Because they also have this shining company, which means that they all need to be base contact with, I think, 2 other units in the squad. They're all together as well, and they're an absolute nightmare to actually pile in against, because your units get caught up in them, and absolute horrendous.
That's terrible. One of my friends played Nighthaunt, and those new models just seems to be daisy chain for days.
They're very spindly. They're like those they're like barrel of monkeys. They're all like just get caught up.
That's exactly what he said.
Yeah, that's right.
And Ox King is an innate deodorant. So true.
Yeah, that's so true. I think if you have experience with any, like, convention, especially your nerdy conventions, deodorant is a big issue with some people. And it's always painful. It's actually quite painful as a TO. I've actually been blessed and not had the experience of having to talk to someone about it. But I know it would be an awkward thing because sometimes people, they don't know that they're the one that needs to, they forgot to, and it sucks, but it's an awkward thing.
I was just about to ask you, what do you do as an organizer? Do you put in a fine print that says deodorant will be appreciated?
No, I expect people to. I think that's all part of player etiquette. If someone is having a hard go at it, I do mention it to. I might mention it to them. I've never had to, but I would probably be like, "Look, just go to the corner shop, grab some deodorant. It'll, just." And I think that for the most part, people would appreciate being told that because, like I said, sometimes they don't know, and
So right,
yeah.
Too true. And I don't know for other people, but I stress out, and then bad smells follows. So
yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm definitely not thinking about my smell when I'm losing.
It's a high cardio sport, so you will sweat. And there's the rooms that you play in, even though they are for the most part air conditioned. There's you're a lot of people crowded in a space, so it does get warm. So yeah. And we're not even doing it in summer, so wait until summer happens, and then it'll be really sweaty. So,
yeah, and okay, well, that's pretty much my list. Now, before we get into Tom's list, I just want to say to everyone who is watching right now live, I think Tom has something special for us, so that he worked out. That's good for everybody. So, if you want to know what it is, stay till the end.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right. Over to you, Tom.
Alrighty. All right. Do you want to just pull up the slide? All right. So, a lot of these things I do, we have covered slightly. So if I do start to repeat myself, just knock me on the head, and I'll move on. All right. So the tips. So John, he asked me to bring 5 tips for new players entering the tournament scene, and I pretty much had all my tips focus on actually playing the game and the actual goal of the tournament, as opposed to, even though it's as important, your obvious tips before are actually something that I didn't want to use as a tip, even though they are important, because there are plenty of videos on YouTube that you can watch. I'm not sure if John has one himself, or he might bring out one soon, which is just general advice like this. But yeah, hydration is important. Shoes are also important. You don't want to wear something that's uncomfortable. Something that you can stand in all day is actually quite important, even though some events like the one I run, we do have chairs. You will be standing for a lot of the day regardless. The other thing that I think this is more common with veteran players, because usually if you're a new player, you're very excited, like it's a very new thing, so you read the players package a few times. But if you're a veteran player as well, you should try to at least, if it's a new event you're going to, read the players package in its entirety. If it's an event that you're going, like a monthly event like AoS and 3D, maybe skim it, see if there's any changes, or even just message the TO being like, anything different from last month? And if they say yes, say no. The players package can contain important information, such as we have one that shows where the local free parking is for the day, as well as how to get to the store. Although John, you did mention that because there's good games near Dice Arcade, we need to actually have a photo of where to go as well on the street end.
Yeah. But that morning, I wasted 5 minutes trying to find the shop.
Yeah.
Because I was late, so I was half blinded. Yep.
Of course, yeah. And then plan your trip so that you can arrive on time. Because there is usually a briefing at the start during registration. I like to go through a few different things and have the grudge matches declared then. So as well as any new points for the tournament. All right. So next slide.
Before you get to your next one, I wish I knew these points before I went to the last event because I was late, so I didn't play it properly.
For sure.
And I didn't read the package until pretty much 1 hour before I left. I was like, okay, where am I going to park?
Yep.
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah. No, it is. It's good to read the package because a lot of them do go into how your scoring is measured and also how the pairings work as well. And also there is a checklist in most of them. There is a checklist in the packages on what to bring as well. And also, like Christopher says, it's great to chat with other players. It's like the reason why you're going to a tournament as well, to meet new people who have the same hobby.
Good point, Chris. Yeah. So I totally can relate because I was late last time, but next time, this Saturday. All right,
you're going to be right on time. One. You'll help me set up, right, John?
Yeah, something joking. Like that. Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So first tournament, the woes for new players. This is the ones that now it's going to be different for every player. If you have experience in wargaming or board games, you might pick up a lot of things a lot quickly. You might have an eidetic memory where you can just remember all the rules after the first time you read them. I am unfortunately cursed with still forgetting my Soul Blight rules, even though I've been playing them for over a year. Biggest one, I think, is running out of time. We've said it before, 2 hours, 45 minutes is actually a pretty short game of Age of Sigmar. When I'm playing casually or just practice games, we can go as long as 4 hours sometimes. And it doesn't feel like we've been taking it slow. But 2 hours, 45 minutes, it creeps up on you, and that's including deployment. Most tournaments, they do the terrain setup beforehand for you. So usually you get to, like our tournament, we do pre-setup for terrain, and also we roll the mystical terrain. So all you need to do is objectives, your faction terrain, and your deployment, but it still eats into it. And the last one is losing focus. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but that's more losing focus on what the objective of the game is, what you're doing there for the day. Now my 5 points, which I will elaborate on, we went over it before with gaming aids, but it's actually one of the biggest things. And I went in kind of chronological order of how you would view a tournament. So gaming aids and reminders, that's all about preparation. Threat ranges, we talked about that a little bit as well. You were talking about the pile-in movements and stuff. Deployment, which I briefly touched on with the running out of time. Victory requirements, and then I've got short and long-term goals at the end. So, gaming aids. This is the photos on the right are actually examples of quick reference pages that I prepared for my own Soul Blight army, and it pretty much has all the crucial information I needed from my core book, my battle tome of Soul Blight Gravelords, just so in the event that I needed to quickly check something, or it's just there, and it's on 2 pages, which are both like double-sided. It's got all my spells, command abilities, when I can use them and stuff. I also have the War Scroll cards for the units, but you do eventually learn to not need them as much the more you play. You can make custom sheets yourself, which like similar to what I did. You can also use, there's a website called AoS Reminders, which you can actually put your army list in. I never really liked it that much because it's too much information, and it goes phase by phase. It says, at the start of this phase and mid phase, and it's too much. You're reading the entire time. AoS Shorts actually has a bunch of different aids. You briefly touched on them before, but one of the most useful ones that I have found is they've got a lot of card reference guides, which you can, if you download and then make sure you can get card sleeves like from Magic the Gathering, as long as they're sized to the right. You might need to take it into an image adjustment software and just make sure they're the right size. Go get them printed at Officeworks on heavy cardstock, and then you've basically got a deck of all your command abilities that you can, keep track of and quickly reference. It's similar to having War Scrolls, but for your faction rules and GHB rules. But for they've got other things as well. They've got like the half-page cards like you have for your Sylvaneth. but it's definitely worth checking out at AoS if you just Google AoS shorts. And then you've also got the Games Workshop War Scroll cards, which are useful. The only problem that you've got with them is when War Scrolls get updated, you might need to add a post-it note to it or something. You can also make your own War Scroll cards. I know that you've done that, and I did as well for my Soulblight, because they were you could not get the Soulblight War Scroll cards after about 3 months of the new battle tome. You've also got the Games Workshop app. However, one of the big issues with AoS app is navigating it takes time, because it's not the fastest app in the world. Also, bear in mind, if you're relying on that and you go to a tournament venue that has no reception, you're kind of screwed.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, you don't want to be too reliant on that.
No, you're right. And I also found that using the app is actually quite slow unless you're only looking for one thing once in a while. Because if you are relying on that.
Yeah, I pretty much I've started to use the app a little bit for War Scroll referencing when I don't have my War Scrolls. But other than that, just basically I use it to build my army and reference what my army list is, and to also share it with my opponent.
Actually, we've got a comment here. AoS Reminder is great when you first start. Yeah. Absolutely. I think from a complete new player's perspective, AoS Reminder is fantastic, because I was dumbfounded by how many things I need to be aware of in one turn. Oh, so that helped a lot.
Yeah,
but I think
makes a good. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, for me, my personal experience, it's more echoing your experience, Tom, because I didn't have a great time with the AoS reminders. It was so much data, and it's all the time. I feel like I need to read all the time.
Well, I will say that it is definitely different strokes, because I know my older brother used it, and he knows everything off the back of his hand now. So he used it for his Osiarch Bone Reapers. So I think Ox King makes a good point about you can use it, and then as you learn things and you know things off the top of your head, you can remove those ones from your reminders and just keep making your list smaller and smaller. So it's definitely a good training thing. It just didn't work for me personally. So, should say all of these tips need to be taken with a grain of salt. I'm not a uber competitive player. I do okay. But these things made my life a lot easier when I first started.
I think what Ox made a good point here that I totally agree with is it's a great way to study it, because you do need to study it, and it's easy to not realize how much depth you got to get into by just looking at how pretty the battle tome is. With all the fluff.
It's a good way to. It's a good thing to use, I think, for when you're practicing or having a casual game, especially when you're learning a new army. It's definitely it softens the blow. And if you're actually moving, Jack makes a good point as well. He if you are going to go the route of making taking cards as your basically a deck of cards with all the battle tactics, etc. on them. Traveling to the events is, you do need to pack a bag and have all your gaming aids with you. They're a great way to travel if you don't want to have just like a bunch of like loose pages.
I totally agree with what Jacob's saying here. I totally do that in the last games when I wasn't sure if I misheard something, and particularly when I was playing against Khorne and my unit just was wiped off the map. I had to justify for myself that I didn't I didn't lose it the wrong way. But the app is
it happens, bad. All right, so that's pretty much gaming aids in a nutshell. I'd say you can also, there are little things as well that you can think of, like if you're running an army that uses an alternative if a lot of them are using a specific movement, like for example in Soulblight, I know I keep coming back to that, but that's the army I play. In Soulblight, a lot of the movement is 4 inches, which is a little bit of an odd number. But if you're running, that makes it 10 inches. So if you went and if you have access to a 3D printer or something, and you made a bunch of 10-inch measurement gauges, or a bunch of 4-inch measurement gauges, that would be really good for a Soulblight Gravelord player. But yeah, if you have access to a 3D printer, you can print yourself all kinds of little tools. I think JMP asked if someone else will host so I can play with them.
And anyone on the call can help Tom, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I actually I do like hosting. That being said, if any of my if anyone in the community ever wants a game with me, I'm more than happy to play anyone. I think I needed to line up a game with Bruce though, because he did ask me for a game, and then I was on it. I mean, I've just been starting a new job, so being a bit hectic, I only managed to, I think, have one game in the last. I've had 2 games since the new GHP came out. So I'm actually so out of practice, and I'm about to go to Bathurst. So, but yeah, like if you're part of the Dice Arcade AoS community, you can reach me through there. Otherwise, there
you go. I think your brother just put his hand up there, but I'll let you guys work that out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Actually, we've got a few people watching here live. If you have got any game mates that you love or your favorite that isn't listed here, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. That. Yeah. Let's move on to the next tip. Yeah, so this is kind of a big one. So planning your deployment. Now this the biggest benefit you get from planning your deployment is 2 things, in my opinion, which is saving time. So the quicker you deploy, the more time you have to play. And the other one is, if you plan your deployment, it makes and you have a general strategy for how you want to run your army. Your first couple of rounds generally go a little bit more smoothly, and you're not kind of just being chaotic and going off the cuff. So I have a couple of examples, visual examples over on the right. If you see the top right, it might look a little bit confusing, but what I did there, I was preparing for Maitland's GT, and I can't remember what battle plan it was. I think it may have been Feral Foray, maybe, but I pretty much had I think I was doing it in Photoshop. I had the battle plan kind of measured out with a grid so I could see inches and everything else. Had where the circles of the objectives were, and the green circles are where my grave sites I was planning on dropping. I had to have 2 in my territory, so I had 2 on the border edge, and I could have 2 anywhere else. And so that is Jack just pointed out, it's Savage Gains actually. So this allowed me to do a quick deployment of my terrain pieces. I knew where they were going before I even started the game, because it didn't matter who I was against, because they deploy after I place my terrain pieces. And the plan with the grave sites is to just have it cover as much of the map as possible. Now, when it comes to actually planning your deployment for your units, you do need to know, if you know your synergies, what units are meant to be paired with other units. For example, in Soulblight, I'm not running zombies this season because they get crunched by bounty hunters, but I was running like 60 or 40 zombies, and they would go with a vampire lord, necromancer, and a corpse cart. They would kind of be one body. So I know that they are going down in a certain way. And if I had them in a battle regiment and stuff, I could just drop them in one go. And if you know what order each unit is going down, you're going to deploy them in as well, you would have a general sense of how they, you don't need to think of, is this going next? Is this what? So I'm going to go, okay, zombies down. Okay, Graveguard are going to start deep strike in reserve. You don't need to waste your opponent's time. You can still adjust your deployment based on how your opponent's deploying. It's less prevalent now, but we used to have a lot of battle regiments. I never ran them very much because I preferred running other things, and I was always so heavy in units that I would usually lose the deployment anyway. But knowing these things saves time, just gives you a better foot forward in the first round or two. And
yeah, I think that's a good point. I think for new players, especially when I first started, when I first saw the map, I realized, oh, this is huge. So I don't need to worry about spacing and distance so much. Man, was I wrong? Well, there are two, right? The first one was threat ranges of range units really does make a difference where you deploy.
That might actually be a good good segue into the next slide.
Oh, okay.
Threat ranges. So, third tip is knowing your own threat ranges. But more importantly is to ask your opponent what their threat ranges is. And so you can see I've put here, you've got a few different, it means a few different things. So for wizards and priests, you really only need to know what their spell range is, because they can't move before they use their spells. So unless the priest can, like, they can't do shenanigan stuff though. They could always do something like an umbral spell portal, which would increase their range. Or they could also do, like, a priest could teleport something, which would then change the range of something else. So it's always good to query your opponent. Shooting units, they can move and then shoot. Melee units, move, charge. Now, we talked about this during your slides. One of the biggest strategies for running zombies as a Soulblight Gravelord player was that I could run my zombies 10 inches, and if they were within 6, they would be able to pile in, which is absolutely devastating if you can get them in there. Additionally, if you can if you've got other synergies, like there's a spell in the Soulblight Gravelords list, the Necromancer cast, which allows them to activate twice, that's even more devastating. So knowing the threat ranges and keeping either your units out of those threat ranges, because having a using command point to make them run 10 and then piling in 6, they don't need to roll anything to actually determine that they're in. So knowing threat ranges, whether they're guaranteed or not, it'll allow you to keep your units safe when you need them to be, or at least try to, if they are going to need a charge, if you can make it as hard as possible or make it easier for you. It's all these little things that will just generally allow you to perform a little bit better.
Good point. And I give my two cents from a new player's perspective. I remember when I first came across this concept, it was so many keywords, threat range, charge range, power in range. It seemed like a lot, and I didn't want to burden myself, so I thought, But what I've learned was, after you dealt with these keywords a couple of times, it actually makes the game more fun, because the battlefield is a puzzle, is a great puzzle, and you want to identify the pieces that you can solve, and that's good fun. So anyway,
absolutely. Look, the players who are top of the they're top of the tournaments, and they always get podium wins, or they're first in their faction. They're the ones who know how to space their armies correctly, how to move them to avoid threat ranges. They know how to screen properly. They know how to avoid their opponent's screens, or so this even starting to try to understand threat ranges will it'll be a skill that you will develop throughout throughout learning the game. Getting better and better, you'll still need to maintain awareness of this, as well as your spacing. Oh yeah, and also don't be afraid to ask your opponent their threat ranges multiple times. If you need to clarifying things with your opponents, if they get annoyed, then that's their problem, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, good to move on?
Yeah.
Alrighty. So this one is more about losing focus in the game. A lot of people like to try to table their opponent, which is a great strategy if you can do it. A lot of the time you can't, especially against like veteran players who know how to, protect their army. So it's probably better to focus on Chris just mentioned about threat ranges before. it's a lot to learn, but it does pay off over time. He's exactly right. So back to choosing victory, not genocide. Every tournament I've been to has always been based. Your placing has been based on usually the win first, followed by battle tactics, and then other things. Sometimes grand strategy, sometimes victory points. I usually run wins. Then ties are broken with battle tactics, then broken with grand strategies, then victory points. So even if you do table your opponent, if you fail to get your battle tactics, and which means lower victory points, maybe get your grand strategy, you're still doing yourself a disservice. You might get the win, but that'll still prevent you from performing as well as you can. JMP makes a good point. Blood for the blood god, and then Joshua makes a good point. Skull for the skull god. They're good points, but I mean, I don't think that they're going to. That it is definitely. If you can do it, then go for it. But otherwise, you should probably try to just stay focused on maximizing your VPs.
Just run like 4 sets of 4 Fulminators. Wait, can you even do that? Yeah, you can.
Yeah, because you can do others. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you have enough points in a 2K list to run 4 sets of 4 Fulminators, but anyway, okay, so yeah, denying your opponents their objectives are almost as good. Obviously, it won't help with your placing, but if you're going for the win, then you do want to deny if you can't get a victory point for you in that turn, you want to try and deny anything that they can get in the next turn. So yeah, it's not always the best. Yeah.
No, you go. Yep.
I was saying it's even though for me especially, I always struggled with this because I like to fight and I can't help myself sometimes. So, but sometimes being defensive and focusing on battle tactics or VP and saving your strength is sometimes a better option.
Yeah, and I've been dying to say this, but you guys all know this already. I actually found the game. I discover a lot more dimensions to the game after I played for the victory points instead of rolling as many hits and wounds as possible.
Absolutely.
Didn't expect that, and it's great. Yeah.
This GHB, especially the battle tactics compared to last season, they're so much harder. It was very common in the last GHB to get at least 4 battle tactics a game. Usually you get 5 there were options if you were able to use your own battle tactics as well. This one it's a lot more difficult. Usually it makes it easier it means that it's easier to deny your opponent from getting them, and it makes it harder for you. So they're definitely far more valuable than they used to be.
And I would say for new players as well, the earlier you look into the battle tactics, I think you're going to have a better game, and your game is going to get better as well.
Exactly.
A lot better.
And if your opponent tries to genocide you, and you still get more victory points than them, you win. So
yeah,
you could get tabled and still win, but I've never seen that happen. But
I had to check that rule a couple of times, and apparently so. So no. Anyway,
yeah. Next slide. All right. So this is more an attitude, I think, than anything else. But I think it is a good mindset to have for your long-term goals, because as nice as it is to want to, get on the podium and, get prize money if it's available, it's probably not going to happen. Like, not for your first tournament, unless you have incredible experience and you're a savant at wargaming. Your tournament day, your first tournament day especially, and all tournament days, it should be about meeting other players who enjoy the same hobby, and also having like a good time, because that's why we do the hobby, have a good time. There are some tournaments like AoS and 3D that have a sportsmanship award, which is, good value. It's good store credit. And also you can be, and this is actually a really good, it's selfish, because the more practice partners you get, that's how the more games you get to play, against a variety of players, and the faster you'll improve. So if your goal is to get the podium, you shouldn't focus on the podium. You should focus on getting the sportsmanship award.
Good point. And getting more reps, playing more games. Yeah.
Get more reps, play more games. Because the other thing as well, because we're all war game hobbyists, and we love to talk about the war game. Tips and tricks that people pick up along the way that aren't obvious. The best way to they want to talk about it. People, for the most part, like to share their insights into the game or discuss strategies. If you're in a decent wargaming Discord, or if you're in a decent Facebook group, or even if you're just meeting up for games, you'll definitely learn more just by meeting new people and making friendships through that. And last thing to remember is if you do make a ton of mistakes and end up with 3 losses, don't give yourself a hard time. We've all been there. And if you do lose, there's always the wooden spoon, which is the greatest award that you can get at any tournament.
I thought about fighting for that wooden spoon, but maybe that isn't my... Well, I don't know. My next list is pretty bad, so we'll see. Yep. Well, I thought it's bad.
I think your list is okay this tournament. In fact, it seems like we have a huge spread of factions this tournament. So I'm actually really excited to see everyone go at it.
I saw there was a crew boys in the mix. I'm excited to see that.
We've got 2 big wars and 1 crew boys, but they're all quite different from one another. So it's going to be a good, lots of fighting. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I love those games. Yeah. Blood for the blood god.
That's right. Yeah, and so but yeah, so I think that if your aim is to be a competitive player, you should probably not focus on trying to. Don't let it upset you. Learn to love. Don't learn to love losing. Learn to be able to enjoy games that you lose, right? Because if you're a good opponent and you're the person who wins the game, enjoys playing against you, they'll want to play against you again. And no one wants to play one-sided games. So people will always give you advice, and that's how you improve.
Actually, that's a very interesting point. Maybe it's worth talking a couple of minutes on that one. I think not everyone has the skill to lose gracefully or happily. I don't know if that's ever a thing. I'm not great at it, but what I find sometimes is if I focus on what I can learn from the game or my mistakes in the game, that kind of takes away from the devastation.
The
getting
sweat,
tabled.
Getting tilted and stuff. The other thing as well, it also depends on who you're playing against. I know that if I'm playing against one of my brothers, we get way more tilted than any of us do playing against other people at tournaments. Chris makes a good point. Take a note on what caused your loss. Ask if you're playing against a veteran player as well. Shout out to Joel Graham, because I know that he played against my brother at Sydney Slaughter, and he beat him. Oh, Joel beat him, but he gave him lots of good advice. I know. My brother Jacob makes a good point. Learn to love learning, right? It's always, look, you're never going to have as much fun losing as you do winning, but it is the people who win the most, who are the biggest, the most veteran players, they've probably lost more times than anyone else. They've lost because if you lose enough times, you will eventually learn what you're doing wrong.
And I think another way to think about it for people coming in could be like a lot of other games like chess. After you have a battle, you would actually talk out, at the fourth move, I would do this, and then you would have done that. I think that's also the same with Age of Sigmar, except the difference is you're completely exhausted.
Absolutely. Yeah. And usually, yeah, of course you do talk about the game following it. Yeah. as Jack Jolt stomped him into the dirt. And yeah, another example, and I think if Ox is still in the chat, I remember me and Ox, because we were practicing for.
Nice one.
I think we were practicing for Sydney GT, and it was prior to our list submission. And he brought his Stormcast, and I brought my competitive Free Across Soulblight list. And because people had been giving such a hard time to long strikes and shooting, he decided to bring a list without any shooting. And it was pretty one-sided, if I think Ox would agree. And I basically told him, bring what you feel like you can win with. Like, you don't let other people decide your list, right? Even though you don't need to bring certain, like, you can build lists around units, and you can be competitive, but don't let 6-inch zombies something. That's right. That's what their game was called. Don't let other people dictate what you bring, if that makes sense. Like, you can't. Obviously, you don't want to be considered the most sweaty person in the world, but I think that you can make lists that are both competitive and also there's a nice middle ground, right?
Yeah, and maybe this is a point to wrap up in a way that what are some tips that didn't make it to the top 5? Because I asked you for 5. Otherwise, we could be here for days, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a couple more? I
just off the cuff. Yeah. Well, you start, and I'll think up a couple as well.
Okay, I think the first one is playing by intent. I learned this from hobby cheating with Vince, and that's essentially you don't go for the nitty-gritty and try to win by hoping your opponent didn't realize what they've missed, or force them to, leading your opponent to make unforced mistakes in order to win. I think that's the poor way to play. Bad for you, bad for the opponent. It's much better to spend a little bit of time just to talk through, hey, I want to be 3 inches away from you.
Yes.
Is that cool? And if that's cool, then you don't essentially
that's actually
need to measure 3 inches for everything.
That's an excellent point. When you're saying if you're moving, like for an example, there's mystical terrain in the game, for those who don't know, called Deadly. And if you land within an inch near it, or if you deploy an inch near it, you have to roll a dice, and on a 1, you have to take a mortal wound. Is it D3 mortal wounds on it? Yeah, that's right.
I can't remember. Okay.
So if you see your opponent doing that, I always try to make the effort. I'm like, don't forget that's deadly. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, of course. Because you can help your opponent point out so that they're not making if they're having a lapse or they forget that it's deadly, or if they're even deploying and they're not aware that the rule is deploying. You don't want them to set up 4 units at the start of the thing and be like, well, that's deadly, and you need to roll for all of them. And they'll be like, oh no, it's only when you move. And then you might be right still, but it wasn't their intention to do that, right? So
absolutely
try to help your player, help your opponent, because if you play your opponent's best game, and that's actually a better way to improve as well. Yeah, JMP.
And I also find it kind of go both ways. If you show the intent that you want to have a good game, a fair game, there's going to be times. I can't speak for everyone. I speak for myself that I would definitely forget some things. And if they go, "Hey, did you remember you forgot to shoot?" Right?
That's a good attitude to get the sportsmanship award, John. It's a good.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that I was. I'm just going through my players package. God, I'm not actually.
All right. While you're fishing that out, my other one
would
ahead. Be. I mean, this is Mr. Obvious, Captain Obvious, but build your list around what you love the most. I think that's cool, because even if you lose, at least you got what you love on the table, and hopefully you can do something with it. That's good.
That's a good point, and that actually gives me a light bulb. if you are running a list that you like, don't be too quick to, jump ship to another faction and try that you think is like, if you want to build another faction because you think that they're really good in the meta right now, that means that you have to learn an entire new faction, get it somewhat painted, put it together. You're pretty much taking 2 steps back. And by the time that you're actually able to play that faction, they might be out of the meta at that point.
I was gonna say, yeah, and I was like after you paint it barely, then you gotta wish and pray that the gods at GW doesn't suddenly.
There are meta chasers, but I think that it really depends on your goals. Like if you're trying to have a fun, because if you look at the spread of the faction spread of ours, we've got no more than 2. I think we've got 2 Sylvaneth, 2 Fire Slayers, 2 Big War, and 2 Maggot Kingdom.
Do you have that pie chart here?
Yeah, let me just see if I can. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you in Messenger so you can.
All right.
You can put it up.
It's quite diverse this time, which is.
The last few months we've had it pretty diverse. So we don't have any more than 2 of any faction, which is a great spread. But that's what I've noticed about almost every tournament. There's enough balance in the game. Like there are obviously some factions are easier to play than others, and it also depends on what style of play you like. I personally prefer armies that fight a lot, which is why I run Soulblight. I did start to put together. I am in the middle of putting together some Deepkin, but I'm not in too much of a rush to play them because I don't know how good they are with Galatian veterans right now because I'm fairly certain they get stomped. But I might see if I can put a Sharks list together, but they still need to get painted as well. So
okay, well it would be I would love to run some Fulminators into that.
That would
be
fun,
so
right?
satisfying.
Oh yeah.
Okay, apologies. I haven't. I'm new to this. I haven't worked out how to share a.
No worries.
How to share just that? Yeah, I'm sure there's a very easy way to share a screen, but yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. We won't go too much trouble. I can tell you. Yeah, I can tell you though. It's pretty split, and we've got 18 players, and we've pretty much got everyone's a single faction except for. Maggot Kin has 2, Big War has 2, Fire Slayers have 2, and Sylvaneth have 2, which is great to see that. If you looked at Maggot Kin a year ago, no one was playing it, but they got the new battle tome, and they were pretty strong for a bit. But people have also figured them out a little bit, so not as many people are running it. We've got Fire Slayers, no one was running them really. Sylvaneth, no one was running them. We're seeing a lot of Stormcast. We're seeing what else were we seeing? We're seeing a lot of some Lumineth, way more Lumineth than we have been seeing in the last 6 months, but lots of Gargants. So it's good to see that there's the meta is in a healthy spot right now.
How many Lumis do we have this time?
Oh, we've just got the one. We've got if you remember Rob, he ran Soulblight last time, so he's running Lumineth this time.
I see. Okay.
So yeah, very interesting. We've got 1 Cruel Boys, 1 Nighthaunt. I think we had 3 Nighthaunt last tournament, so that's been rolled back. 1 Skaven, 1 Legion of the First Prince, 1 Zinch, 1 Khorne, 1 Stormcast, which is rare. Usually you have multiple of them. We've got 1 Daughters, which is you, and then we've got a host of the Everchosen. So yeah, all over the place.
That's cool. I don't know. I was kind of expecting maybe I would see more Lumi because the new box just dropped last week.
I think that you won't see Lumi until people have figured out the new tome. Jacob used to run Lumineth before. I think his last tournament was Sydney GT, if I remember. He kind of hung him up, but he was like one of the few players who was still running it at that point.
Is that because it was debuffed? Sorry.
It's more that I think that one of the big changes to Lumineth, and Jacob can confirm for me if he wants, but I think one of the things that really took the wind out of their sails was the change to
the line of
Overwatch.
Sight?
No, the Overwatch thing.
Oh, okay.
So they changed it from 9 inches to 6 inches. Wait, no, it's not Overwatch. It's Unleash Hell, the command ability. So when you get charged,
Got it.
you got Unleash Hell. So, oh yeah, he played Lumineth at Sydney Slaughter. So, yeah, he was playing it well into outside their meta. Although we did have I think there was one other Lumineth there, but I could be mistaken. There could have been more. But yeah, so just slight changes. It'll be interesting to see what their new battle tome is. I think that because they have a lot of toys to play with, Lumineth, as far from what I can tell, because they've got so many spells and other shenanigans. So it will be interesting to see if they have a more specific style and less options, but they're still a little bit more competitive than they are now.
It'll be fascinating to see what the new tome comes out. I mean, currently the tome is so complicated. I don't think I can play them without burning myself out. There's
I was
many tokens to keep track of.
I think I kind of got the hang of playing against them just because, like my brother, like the more you play against a faction, the more you learn how their tricks. So because I played against them more than most, I also think that I have a less. Like, a lot of people seem to have an issue playing against them because they just don't have a good time. But it's like exposure therapy for me. I've played against them so much, it's just like you're like, okay. I know that they're going to screw me.
So for new players who doesn't know what we're talking about, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Lumi used to have massive number of archers.
Yeah, so they do a lot of archers. They've got a few
they don't need line of sight. Is that right?
Yeah, the Sentinels, there's a few. I don't know the exact rule, but they didn't really need line of sight. As long as they're they didn't need line of sight on anything. As long as I think their captain didn't have line of sight on them, they were able to shoot because he pointed them out or something.
It's 30-inch nonstop.
Yeah,
and
a lot of
people
as
well.
I don't know about Techless. Techless was he fell out of the meta at about December last year, I think. But I think the big issue that people have with Lumineth is that they're very we were talking before the show. They're kind of blue in magic. We're very control-y. They basically reduce the amount of command points that you can use with Total Eclipse. So that is an absolute nightmare because command points are the thing. They're such a powerful resource. And then you've got silly war scrolls like foxes, which make they're really difficult to kill if you don't have shooting yourself. But when it comes to the Sentinels and their output and Wardens and their output, they're not nearly as terrible as people made them out to be.
Okay.
So people give them a harder time than they and especially with the Unleash Hell debuff, they're okay.
Okay. I guess I'll need to wait for the new tome to find out. So
it'll be interesting. I hope that they do. Yeah, I hope they become. I hope they do come back, but I do hope that they become less painful to play against.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be the trend now, isn't it? I mean, it's good news for new players because it seems like from the limited time that I've been in Age of Sigmar, they're simplifying all the rule sets as they go.
Yeah, but they're not. I don't think that they're not really losing the flavor of each faction, which is nice.
The last few books are very nice.
Yeah, and I think Maggotkin had a stranglehold, especially with the. They had a few really competitive lists there for a while, but no. I think that they've kind of been figured out a little bit. And for the most part, every other factions that's come out, they seem to be fairly good, but not too strong. So yeah, it's just it's in a good space right now. The meta.
It is, yeah.
GW are doing a pretty good job of it, I think.
Yeah, it's a great time to be in it, and I guess we can talk about this for days. So
yeah, we could. Yeah,
we did mention there's a special something that you've organized for us. So you want to?
Yeah, I'll get into it. So so I don't actually work for Dice Arcade. I only run the AoS event. We do it once a month, but hopefully looking at bigger, better things in the future. One of my biggest beliefs is that you really should support your local game store. team at Dice Arcade has basically facilitated a great space for everyone in South Sydney to come play. It provides mats and terrain, and it's great terrain. And we're I think that the event that we're putting on once a month is pretty good. So, and his prices are competitive. I know that there are places that can undercut him, but it would suck to lose your local play space. So usually whenever I get something, even if I could find something a bit cheaper, I usually do go for Dice Arcade myself anyway. So speaking of undercutting people, we have a promo code, 3% off at Dice Arcade. The promo code is level up, all one word, and that's valid until the 14th of September. And there's that's their website there. So awesome. they already are 15% cheaper than Games Workshop retail, and so that's an additional 3% off.
Cool. And this is something that we can use when we go to the store as well.
I believe if you asked him to put in that code, I'm sure that he'll be more than happy to facilitate it.
Sweet. Maybe look at picking something up this weekend then. Mm-hmm. And with that's a great place for us to maybe call it a night, because we can probably sit here and talk about things for hours, maybe separated for another day. So, hey, thank you so much for joining us, Tom. Great insights.
Thanks for having me, John. It's actually been a blast, and like I could talk about AoS for hours. So I look forward to seeing you on the weekend, and I think we've got a few players in the chat who are actually coming on the weekend. So everyone be on time, otherwise.
On time. Yeah, that's at me. Yep, and. That's a good one. Do you have to whisper it in person?
Yes, that is correct. You have to come up and whisper it in my ear. So
great clarification. Okay. Well, hey, thanks everyone for tuning in, and I hope you got something out of it. I know I did, and I had fun anyway. So great.
I had a great time. Thanks so much, John, for having me.
All right. Level up, guys. Hope you have a good time. Happy hobbying, and we'll see you next time.